Mistake after mistake after mistake. The Chiefs fall to the Colts in Indianapolis on a game that shouldn't have been close. We're going to get into the details with Matt Derrick here immediately post-game. All that coming up right now on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, friends and neighbors. We appreciate you making us your first listen after this debacle in Indianapolis. There's just something about that building, right? This is Locked On, your team every day for free on every platform. Matt Derrick is here from ChiefsDigest.com. Inside the beat about what has to go on and where. Chris and I are going to get into it. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, NFL 33, and RGR Football.
And I'm Chris Clark from Chiefs Corner. You can find me over there. And there's a lot to talk about, mostly in a bad sense. And say what you want about, and I know we'll talk about this at some point, about Chris Jones and that penalty. But really, special teams lost in this game. I mean, that's the reality of it.
I don't even think that's enough. Everybody made mistakes. The entire thing was a debacle. This team was completely unprepared from the moment they stepped on the field today, Matt, and I don't understand it. Do you have an inkling?
I mean, you could kind of see this coming a little bit. I mean, as far as that, and we talked about it earlier this week, you did not want to be playing the Colts once they started trying to figure things out a little bit. And I don't think from the performance that the Colts put up today, you can certainly say that they figured everything out. But they certainly stopped turning over the ball in the second half. They played much better defense today. And to your point about special teams, the Chiefs had a chance to take this crowd out of the game, had a chance to take the momentum and any energy that the Colts had out of this game early. And they don't do that with the special teams miscue at the very beginning, gives the Colts the lead and really fired up that team. And I think you could see the confidence for that. And that's just what you can't do with teams like this. I mean, if a team is struggling, you got to keep them struggling. And the Chiefs didn't do that. I mean, they were their own worst enemy today. And they certainly gave the Colts more than plenty of opportunities to win this.
It started with special teams faux pas. You got to the point where the offense was sputtering, that you didn't see the intensity. You didn't see, honestly, a cohesive offense. I think even in the first half, when they moved the ball a bit better, at least. At the end of the day, this isn't just about the quarterback, but the quarterback had some missing throws. Mahomes was probably the worst that we've seen him yet this year. And going back to last season, throwing behind his targets, missing some things, hitting Kelce, trying to hit him on that tight end pass at the end of the end zone on the opposite side. This was just a series of small mistakes that snowballed on them. Is there anything here, Matt, that you take away as the big, well, this is what's going to haunt them for the next couple of weeks? There's some big games coming up.
Yeah, I mean, the one lesson that I think the Chiefs have to take out of this game is really what they did offensively to me in the first half, which, hey, the Colts came out and did exactly what you expected teams to do against the Chiefs this year. I mean, they went after Mahomes with 4. They played the cover 2 shell. They did all the things the Chiefs are going to see plenty of. And they mixed things up a little bit. But in the first half, I think you saw once again, Mahomes was in looking downfield mode. He was scanning, trying to find deeper targets. And that's not how you're going to beat these defenses and these coverages. It's going to be spreading the ball around and taking advantage of what's short and immediate and what's available there. Certainly, hey, the run game's going to bear some of this, and the offensive line is going to bear some of this for both the pass protection and the failure to open up any holes. Because when you can't establish the run, you see what happens in a game like this. But hey, Mahomes only had, I think, 84 yards passing in the first half. I think a lot of that was stemmed back to, once again, trying to look too far downfield rather than taking what was there. I thought he did a better job of that in the second half, but with all the other mistakes that were made, especially on special teams, that wasn't enough to get the job done today.
Well, I'm glad you talk about what Mahomes did in the first half. We have to remember he was maybe a yard from connecting with MVS for the longest touchdown that he's thrown in a very long time. And at some point, those two are going to have to get on the same page. If they don't, then that's not going to be a relationship that's going to continue to work into the future for this organization. But they've got to hit those plays, and he's missed a couple of them preseason and now in the regular season. And I agree with you. He needs to take the shorter stuff. He needs to take what's there, and he needs to be okay with that. But he also has to hit those shots when he gets them, and he missed those today. And Ryan, to your point, I completely agree. He was off, and it didn't look like he was really on Even the throw that Tony kept talking about as being this great throw, this sidearm throw that beats that went to Juju for 50 yards. He was behind on that throw. If Gilmore is in coverage, in good coverage, that may be a pick going the other direction.
I agree with you. And I think you could talk about a couple of different opportunities. The big takeaway here, folks, is that the Chiefs had a game against an opponent that they were, at least on paper, superior than, and they didn't perform. We see this every now and then with this team where there just isn't enough that they bring to the ball game to get over the hump of what is still going to be, despite what we've seen in the last 2 seasons, everybody's best game. This team is always going to get everyone's best game. And I felt like the staff in particular didn't rise to the occasion as well on the offensive side of the ball. We'll talk about the defense in the next segment, folks. But I felt like what we saw at the end of the first half, this little spat where Andy has to get between Patrick and Eric Bieniemy, that seemed to be like the underlying feeling across the whole ball game. And that's just the little tip of the iceberg that popped up there. I think there's something wrong with the coordination here of how they go about trying to get ahead of teams. Matt, can they get that turned around?
Yeah. And to me, what we saw at halftime, I mean, honestly, was a little of probably misdirected anger a little bit from Mahomes. Hey, and Andy Reid, I think, in his comments to the broadcast, made it pretty clear it was his decision. And there's no doubt. I mean, if the Chiefs decide to shut things down before the half and to put the ball away, decide not to go for it, it's not Eric Bieniemy making that decision. And Patrick Mahomes might be able to change Andy Reid's mind, but it's Andy Reid's decision to make. So to a degree, I don't really get that if Mahomes is getting angry at EB for that, because it ain't EB's call. That's not where the decision's coming from. And maybe it's a little bit of Mahomes knowing, hey, he can't get mad at the head coach. He's got to take it out somewhere. And maybe it's a little bit of Mahomes trying to use that fire to get himself going. I mean, because if anything, I think we did see a Mahomes that was a little bit more focused and fired up in the second half. But again, I mean, you need to be able to come out with that sharpness from the very beginning. And it was, to me, once again, problematic. And, and Chris, I think it's a good point that, hey, if they do hit that deep ball, things change completely. But that deep ball also woke up the Colts, because after that, there were no more deep balls to be found. And Mahomes kept trying to look for that. And the Colts were doing everything they could to make sure they didn't get bit, because they knew how lucky they got on that play. And yet you still saw the Chiefs trying to push it. And that's what they can't do. I mean, they can't get into these games where, Mahomes and the offense is trying to push the ball downfield and it's not there. They're going to have to eat their vegetables sometimes in order to have dessert. And this was probably a game where Mahomes needed to eat his vegetables for a little bit. And once he did in the second half, things got better. But I go back, if he did that, if he played the first half like he did the second half, Chiefs probably get another touchdown out of this, and that's probably the difference in the game. But, then again, I mean, we still come back to, it's hard to make up for the fact that your special teams probably cost you 14 points in this game easily, and your defense had a really, really inopportune play at the inopportune time from Chris Jones.
Yeah, and I just want to say really quick, I know we need to take a quick break, but the one thing that really sticks out to me is you watch how this offense played throughout the game. You watch how this defense played throughout the game. Special teams, really, you were absolutely right, Matt. They cost them easily 14 points in this game. And you can't have that in games like this. And the offense never looked like they were in sync. They never looked like they were going to be able to be the offense that you expected them to come out and be. And they have enough weapons on this team. Offensively, they should have been able to move the ball better than they did, because they're not really missing anybody. The Colts, on the other hand, they're missing people, and they're missing people on defense. It should have been a completely different game than it was.
Yeah, without Leonard out there, the offense needed to go into half and get better. I don't know that they did. They needed to get help from the defense, which they did get, except for that inopportune play. And for us, we're sponsored by BetterHelp. You can get those two things together, and it's tough to get your brain wrapped around all these things, especially when you're frustrated and you're trying to right the ship like they were today. You just got to dig in there, and you got to take a step back and get the help that you need to move forward with your experience. That's really what it comes down to. And it doesn't matter whether you're trying to win a ball game, you're trying to work through a personal issue, a career change, whatever happens to be going on. If you're thinking about giving therapy a try, BetterHelp is a great option. It's convenient, accessible, affordable, and entirely online. You get matched with a therapist, filling out a brief survey, and you can switch therapists at any time. When you want to get better, problem solving, when you want to get therapy at home, you can get it here at betterhelp.com/lockedon. Today, you can get 10% off for the first month right there. That's betterhelp.com/lockedon. Now, we'll come back to what they could have done in some of the interesting decision-making process later in the show, but let's take a sidestep for a second, because this was a defense that I felt did their job until Chris Jones lost his mind. And yes, I think we can criticize him here coming up. But on the day, maybe the scariest running back in this league, with at least, if nothing else, a left guard that can move miracles. And they held him even after he got some momentum to 71 yards on the ground. Jonathan Allen had a tough day out against this Chiefs defense. I felt like they rallied to the ball well. I felt like they stuck to their baseline plan pretty well. And in stopping the run, Matt, they got that part done, didn't they?
Yeah, they really did. I mean, you look at the job that they did on Jonathan Taylor. I mean, 21 carries, 71 yards. That's getting it done. And even with, what Ryan did, I mean, gets 222 yards. That's not much. And he had the 2 big turnovers because they were able to get the sacks and the pressure. The defense did everything that it needs to do. I mean, once again, in this league, in this day and age, and with Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback, giving up 20 points honestly should get it done. And wasn't enough today, because the other phases let them down. But no, I mean, I think the Colts played just about as well as they can with what they have. I mean, they're still certainly missing some things on defense, which is why this performance is so disappointing, because the Colts still have plenty of things that they're missing, plenty of guys who are not 100%. You need to take advantage of those opportunities, especially when you look around the league. I mean, it was tight, but the Dolphins beat the Bills when they had to on Sunday in an opportunity. You can't let these situations slip by. And the Chiefs certainly let a big win slip away from it. What should have been probably a more comfortable win, if not an easy win with the situation. But I other than the one huge mistake that Chris Jones made, and that was probably a continuation of a mistake. I don't know if it was one single thing. I mean, he lingered too long on Matt Ryan. Then he kind of stared at Matt Ryan and he jawed with Matt Ryan. Maybe he gets away with 2 of those things, but it was probably just one too many for the official. Maybe he did say the one magic thing that you can't say. But that's it. I mean, that's the biggest thing that I would take away with this defense, is that you just can't have that meltdown at that proper time, because everyone else, they got good play today. Darius Harris, Nick Bolton, L'Jarius Sneed, even Colin Saunders. I mean, you had plenty of guys making plays today.
Yeah, and I think one thing I want to point out really quick, I did not like Karlaftis dropping into coverage, even though it was on a running back early in the game. Did not like that. I know he was in the right position. Darius Harris wasn't. Lost the tight end. That was the first touchdown. But the other thing that really sticks out to me, and I agree with you, Chris Jones's penalty was abhorrent, and you cannot do those types of things. The reffing today just really made me wonder, because how do you not call a face mask? Like, you sat there, you threw the penalty flag. How do you pick that up? Mahomes' face obviously turned. That's offsetting, and they should add another play. I'm not saying it changed the game. I'm not saying it would have changed the outcome. But the officiating today was questionable at best.
It was certainly uneven. I think there's certainly some things that could have gone both ways. I think the play in the end zone, I know the Chiefs fans had a lot of questions about against Travis Kelce. It looked like maybe there was some face guarding going on there. That maybe is a borderline, but you know what? I mean, you're going to get those. And and my motto always is, and generally is 99% of the time, good teams overcome that. And Chiefs today weren't the better team.
I think the only thing that concerned me, obviously Chris Jones losing control there. The only other thing that concerned me is they made a rookie tight end in Woods look spectacular again. This is beyond the personnel that's on the field. This is beyond what we've seen in years past from the safety sets that they use. This is systemic, in my opinion, now. And this just further proves that Steve Spagnuolo doesn't pay enough attention to the tight end forces that are coming at him. Because if a rookie can do this, who hasn't made any noise in this league yet, and have the day that he did in critical times, that really says it to me. And I think that's something they have to go back to the drawing board, Matt, because I think this will key in on opponents to come on how to attack this defense.
Two career receptions, 2 touchdowns, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Exactly. And that's the frustrating thing, because I feel like that the defensive performance that they got today was 96% scouting. because they absolutely snuffed out so many of the things that the Colts were trying to do. I mean,
Yep.
anything that they were trying to do as far as, some of those crossers go, the screen game. I mean, they were eating it up. I mean, it was almost as though Nick Bolton was in the huddle with the Dolphins and knew what was coming, except on 2 plays when they go to Jelani Woods, whom the Chiefs were just not prepared for the ball to go to at all. I mean, they ignored him completely, apparently, in game planning because they were not prepared to account for him on either one of those plays. And yeah, I mean, they certainly had a miscommunication on the first one, a misunderstanding about who was going to be covering him. You could see the indecisiveness there about what was happening, but you got to account for all 11. It doesn't matter whether or not they're on the scouting report or not. You got to account for them.
No, and it reminds me of the fullback touchdown against the Chargers. They didn't even account for the fullback coming out of the backfield on that play. So, I mean, you're absolutely right. Scouting really cost Kansas City in this game. Their defense cost them at very inopportune times. But you go back to a situation where Kansas City's up. And I feel like last year at times they found ways to win games like this. They just didn't have the ability this week. They were up late. Their defense was playing pretty good, not great, but pretty good. And they just weren't able to get it done. And I think that's going to be something to watch going forward. Thankfully, it does look like the Bills lost, so that kind of helps a little bit. But you still don't feel good about it because you're still going to be in a situation where you're chasing, the Miami Dolphins now at this point. And you're still looking at the AFC going, okay, well, it's going to be a 2 or 3 team race at this point.
It may be, and wounded animals are going to come out at each other a lot harder. We'll see what happens with the Bills. We need to talk about the decision-making because there are multiple levels of failure here today that we need to get into. We'll do that on the backside of this. Okay, we're going to wrap this up because I think it all comes down not only to the preparation, but the in-game decision-making. I thought there were a lot of questionable aspects to this ballgame. First and foremost, I think outside of Travis Kelce, I think we understand that today at least, the passing target that was making yardage gains, that was doing the job for you, was Juju Smith-Schuster. They didn't go to a quick game at all when they had the 2 high shells. They didn't go to a quick game in any kind of established run. They threw a couple of screens, which actually worked, and I felt they abandoned them too much. But to me, Matt, the big decision was Juju's on even when he's in close coverage. Obviously, MVS was not, but why not feed him? Why not hit that quick game and just get the ball out and thwart all the pass rush and get it over with?
Yeah, I can't explain that one. Because I think that was absolutely a missed opportunity by 2 people. I mean, one, I think it was, Reed just not putting his team in the position to make the plays that they needed to. And 2, it was Mahomes, once again, that we talked about earlier, trying to push the ball downfield too much rather than taking what was there. When they have done that, we've seen it. I mean, this is going to be a very effective offense, especially when they're just spreading the ball around and they're taking advantage of some of those things that are absolutely money plays that are there. So I can't really explain either one of those. I mean, I once again, I thought they did a better job in the second half, but that's something that you've got to be able to do from the very beginning. And I would say too, offensive line was certainly part of the problem today too. I don't think that the guys up front played as well. Perhaps it was the game plan as far as just how that they were, defending this defense. Maybe they were getting some looks they didn't expect, but there was just a lot of poor execution all around, in addition to the decision-making.
And I wanted to look really quick. Juju got 5 receptions on 8 targets. Travis Kelce had 8 targets, 4 receptions. MVS, 7 targets, 4 receptions. Clyde got 5 targets, 5 receptions. Noah Gray, 2 targets, 1 reception. McCole, 1 and 1. Jarrett McKinnon and Justin Watson were both targeted once and had 0 completions. My point in that is no targets for Fortson at all. No targets for, you have McKinnon, you have Pacheco. McKinnon got 1 target. You didn't use the weapons you have. Sky Moore was not on the field that much, and I understand he struggled as a rookie, but he can be somebody on this offense, and he could have helped today. You need to be able to spread the ball around. You need to be able to get the ball to your playmakers, and for some reason, this offense just did not do that today.
I agree with you. Those were some iffy decisions as well. I think especially when you need to quicken up your ability to deliver the ball and get it gone, Sky Moore comes more into play. You have to use him. Yep. But 2 calls in particular stand out to me, Matt. And this goes back to the coaching staff's mentality about what this game was and how dangerous the Colts were, or their lack of. First and foremost, the ridiculous goal line call of the underhand shovel pass that is really fumbled. And if Travis doesn't recover his own fumble, that's another goal line turnover when you didn't need to do it. If you don't have confidence to run the ball in from the one, this offense is going nowhere because they will continue to force you into these situations. What is Andy thinking in this case?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's a little bit of hubris. I mean, clearly, whether or not the Chiefs feel this way or not. I mean, because they will tell you, if you ask them, that it's not the way that they feel. But they certainly feel like that, as far as just going mano a mano and plunging ahead for 1 yard, they don't have 100% confidence that they can do it right now, even though I think that has been their most successful play. I mean, giving the ball to Mike Burton for a yard has been pretty much their most effective short yardage play. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I mean, but they do feel like that they can pull these things off. They do feel like that they've got the skills and that they trust Mahomes and Kelce to make some of these acrobatic, fancy plays, even in tight quarters, in key positions at the goal line. I mean, it's worked too many times for me to criticize it too hard, but it adds a degree of risk that you have to question about whether or not it's always worth it. And I mean, I joked earlier, today, I mean, it looked like there for a while, the Chiefs were going to try and set a record to see how many plays they could run inside the 1 yard line without running a quarterback sneak, because that's the one play that they absolutely refuse to run. Right. Even though they claim it's not out of the playbook, they won't do it. And you got to feel like sometimes you just need to run the most simple, basic bread and butter plays rather than risking it too much.
And I want to throw out really quick, the one thing that's interesting to me is that the one running back I think that they really could use near the goal line is never going to be active as long as the other three running backs are active. So Ronald Jones, where he could be most effective in that type of scenario or in short yardage, isn't going to get a chance to play. And I get why, because Pacheco is a returner and you like what McKinnon and Clyde bring, but that's where you're hurting the most right now. And I will say this, I did like seeing Colin Saunders in there as a blocker, and I'm sure Ryan loved that.
11 fullbacks, people. That's what we need.
Yeah, no, we don't need that. But
and can I point out that if Clyde had cut it to the left instead of going up the middle, he could have gone into the end zone untouched. But
yeah, well, that's fair.
Yeah.
Not to get too excited about fullbacks. I want to bring up the other one that I think was a crowning mistake in this particular game plan, or at least the decision-making path. And I don't know if this is on Andy Reid or if it's on Dave Tope, but the fake call was so ludicrous in its execution. Its design is fine, but you cannot get used to the fact that you have Patrick Mahomes on 99% of your downs and ask Tommy Thompson, a pounder, to run to the left and throw as a right-handed pseudo quarterback to your backup tight end and try to get something done. This play call should have been run to the right only. It shouldn't have been called in that situation. And I think it's a little crazy that they let that happen, Matt. Was this just desperation creeping through?
Yeah, I'm going to need to dive deeper into it and the next couple of days to find out what exactly happened there. Because sometimes Dave Tope just puts it on as an option, that it's a look, that if they get the look that they like in a situation like that from that range, that, hey, he's given Tommy Townsend and the special teams unit the freedom to make that call themselves. Whether that was this case or it was purely Dave Tope's complete call, I don't know for certain. I mean, we'll see. I mean, maybe Tommy Townsend thought it busted or something, and he did that completely on his own. I'm not sure, because it was hard. I mean, it didn't look like it worked for sure. I mean, there was nothing well executed on that play. And if it was just designed for Tommy Townsend to go that direction and look for Noah Gray, that's not a play I've seen them work on before. So that kind of surprises me, because you're right. I mean, that didn't seem to be the right call in that situation. And if it was, certainly not the execution of it. So I don't know what was going on there. But to your point, though, I will say this about special teams in general. I thought there was a ton of those. I mean, he obviously gave the red right to Isaiah Pacheco to bring out every single kickoff. And to the one at the very end, I mean, I think that's probably one you let go into the end zone to give you the ball 25 with 24 seconds to go, rather than try and run it. And they dug themselves into a couple of, long fields with some bad kickoff returns. The punt return, catches were pretty aggressive. I mean, Sky Moore wasn't even trying to make some fair catches in those situations when he probably should have. And they clearly don't have a lot of trust in Matt Amendola. So, obviously Harrison Butker can't get back fast enough for these guys.
That's the key there. I think that was the issue with that specific kick in that play. It was what, 4th and 9 at that, or 4th and 10 at that point, wasn't it? So you're backed up. You do not feel good about your kicker kicking beyond 40 yards. And obviously he'd already missed. So I don't think that they should have felt like he was going to make that kick. So, yes, he missed an extra point. I'm not going to really care about that because they got a 2-point conversion later. So it ended up not becoming an issue. It's the field goal that really became the issue. Yeah, man, after Amendola had such a great game against the Chargers, he came back and you just choked. And you got to hope that Harrison Butker's back next week. If he's not, Kansas City's going to have to look for another kicker because to me at this point, Amendola doesn't look like a guy that is kicking with any kind of confidence at all. And I don't think that I would have been very confident going into that scenario at the very end of the game with him trying to make the field goal to tie the game.
Folks, nobody escapes the spotlight in a loss like this. Everyone is to blame. There is not one person singled out. We will continue to take a look, break it down, and give you the information that you need to understand where they're going and how they can turn around from this. Check everything out at ChiefsDigest.com. That's where you can get Matt's work as he will be attending pressers and getting the inside information. Thanks for being with us today. We'll have stuff for you all week long, and we'll talk to you next time.